In just a few minutes, we'll dive into the urgent predictions of a top military strategist, revealing why the global conflict with Iran is entering its most dangerous phase. This is based on a video by the Diary of a CEO, featuring Professor Robert Pape.
4 weeks ago, Professor Pape accurately forecasted America's troop deployment to Iran. Now, he returns to explain why previous strategies have only strengthened Iran and what catastrophic scenarios could unfold next.
First, let's understand the expert behind these chilling predictions. Robert Pape, a political science professor at the University of Chicago, has advised every White House since 9/11 on military strategy. His 20 years of wargame modeling consistently showed the ineffectiveness of bombing campaigns against Iran. He discovered that while industrial facilities could be destroyed, the enriched nuclear material itself would remain, simply buried under rubble. This means bombing only delays, rather than prevents, Iran's nuclear ambitions. But the military aspect is only one piece of the puzzle. What about the political fallout? Pape argues that US pressure has inadvertently strengthened Iran. Bombing campaigns, instead of weakening the regime, often energize the population, fostering nationalism and uniting them against an external threat.
Iran has also learned to adapt. They've deeply buried their arsenals of drones and missiles, making them resilient to air power. This decentralization allows them to continue attacks even under intense aerial bombardment.
This leads us to the critical concept of the escalation trap. Stage 1 involves America bombing and killing leaders, but the regime emerges stronger. Stage 2 sees this strengthened regime retaliating, potentially controlling vital shipping lanes like the Strait of Hormuz.
Stage 3 involves considering ground operations to regain control. We are now at a fork in the road, facing a choice between a full-scale ground war or Iran solidifying its position as a new global power center.
How does Iran's growing influence impact global power dynamics?
Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz grants it immense geopolitical leverage. This has already begun to reorient America's allies in Asia, such as India and Japan, who are distancing themselves from the US to secure their oil supplies.
Furthermore, the coalition of Gulf states that once counterbalanced Iran is now fragmenting. US military bases in the region, once seen as anchors of protection, are now vulnerable targets, causing allies to seek security elsewhere, like Pakistan.
The economic implications of this shift are equally alarming.
Iran controls 20% of the world's oil, and Russia controls 11%. Their potential cooperation could remove 30% of global oil from the market, leading to severe economic consequences for the US and Europe, including soaring inflation and rising bond prices. Even though the US doesn't get its oil directly from the Strait of Hormuz, oil is a global commodity. A shortage anywhere drives prices up everywhere, directly impacting Americans at the pump and the broader economy. What about the rhetoric coming from world leaders? President Trump's statements, such as threatening to end the whole civilization, are perceived by Iranians as genocidal intent. This rhetoric, far from intimidating, actually galvanizes support for the regime and accelerates Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons for deterrence.
Professor Pape highlights Israel's role as a diplomatic spoiler, repeatedly undermining US negotiation efforts by assassinating key Iranian figures. This has made a peaceful resolution even more challenging.
So, what if ground troops become the only option? Any ground operation, even a limited one to secure oil fields or enriched uranium, would likely lead to a minimum 6-month conflict. The political consequences of casualties would not lead to withdrawal, but rather a double-down effect as the public demands to finish the jobs. The terrain around the Strait of Hormuz is extremely challenging for amphibious operations. Any attempt to establish a beachhead would face significant resistance and high casualties.
Beyond military strategy, consider the humanitarian catastrophe that could unfold. Targeting Iran's electric power grid, specifically its generating hulls, could cripple the country for 6 to 18 months. This would halt dialysis, heart surgeries, and food refrigeration, leading to widespread disease, hunger, and a measurable decrease in life expectancy for 92 million Iranians.
Such actions would not deter Iran, but rather intensify their desire for nuclear weapons, not just for deterrence, but for paybacks against those who cause such suffering.
Is there any way out of this escalating trap?
Professor Pape suggests a comprehensive deal as the only off-ramp. This would involve enforced military containment of Israel, potentially through US congressional action to cut funds if Israel attacks Iran or its allies.
Crucially, Israel would also need to join the Non-Proliferation Treaty, allowing international inspections of its nuclear facilities. This quid pro quo would create a more balanced situation for nuclear monitoring.
However, history shows that no great power willingly surrenders its power. Iran, now an emerging regional power, is unlikely to concede its gains, especially after experiencing the consequences of being perceived as weak.
What does this mean for global alliances like NATO?
Pape asserts that NATO is for all practical purposes dead. The catastrophic failures in the region, coupled with US demands for European military support without offering protection, have eroded trust and made it laughable to expect European militaries to follow American command.
European leaders face political suicide if they commit troops to a US-led ground operation in Iran. The rising oil prices and economic damage caused by the conflict are already turning European publics anti-American.
The situation is worsening, not improving. Professor Pape concludes that the US is stuck between bad options. The initial mistake of ripping up the Obama nuclear deal in 2018 set the stage for Iran's current advancements, which are now nearly unstoppable without a major ground war.
He advises tracking the movement of deployed troops, not political rhetoric, as the best indicator of what's to come. The current unstable balance between ground war preparations and Iran's rise to power is likely to continue for months.
For the average person, what's the takeaway from this complex and terrifying situation?
Pape emphasizes the need to support centrist political candidates to avoid cycles of extreme policies that lead to worsening outcomes. He believes that the frustration felt by the middle ground in the US mirrors the feelings of ordinary Iranians caught between extremes.
The mental and psychological toll on the 92 million people living in Iran under constant threat and bombardment is immense. Their lives are being profoundly impacted by decisions made far from their homes.
This situation is worse than it was a month ago, and without decisive action towards a viable deal, it will continue to deteriorate. To understand the full depth of this analysis and Professor Pape's insights, make sure to watch the complete video on the Diary of a CEO channel. We'll find the link in the description below.
Enjoying quick summaries like this and saving time? There's more coming, so hit that subscribe button.